welcome to On This Day in Tudor History with me, Claire Ridgway. Today I'm taking you back to the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. For on this day in Tudor history, the 23rd of December 1558, the new Queen, Elizabeth I, daughter of King Henry VIII and his second wife, Anne Boleyn, moved from Somerset House to Whitehall Palace, which became her principal residence. Somerset House, just off the Strand in London, had been in Elizabeth's possession since 1552, when John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland, had offered her the property in exchange for Durham Place, her townhouse. Somerset House had been built by Edward Seymour, Duke of Somerset and Lord Protector, during his protectorate of 1547 to 49. As I've mentioned in a previous talk, it had cost him £10,000 to build and was built in a Renaissance style. He'd used stone scavenged from the charnel house of St. Paul's Cathedral to build it. But Somerset had not had chance to make use of it, as it had only been completed in 1550, and he was sent to the Tower of London for a second and final time in October 1551 and executed in January 1552. In 1553, £900 was spent on preparing it for Elizabeth, and she moved in on the 29th of July 1553, following her half-sister Mary's accession. It was her London home during Mary I's reign. Mary died on the 17th of November 1558, and on that same day, Elizabeth, who was at her country estate of Hatfield, was informed that she was queen. She'd left Hatfield on the 23rd of November 1558 and processed to London with over 1,000 people, being cheered by crowds on her way. She stayed at Charterhouse in London until the 28th of November, when she made her official entry into the city as Queen. She processed to the Tower of London, where she stayed until the 5th of December, when she took a barge to Somerset House. Historian Sarah Gristwood writes that she stayed there until after Mary's funeral on the 13th of December, which formally ended the late Queen's authority. On this day in history, the 23rd of December 1558, Elizabeth moved out of Somerset House to make Whitehall her home, just in time for the Christmas revelry. Whitehall Palace, formerly known as York Place, dated back to the 13th century, when it was the official London residence of the Archbishop of York. In the reign of Elizabeth's father, Henry VIII, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey was Archbishop of York, and he spent a vast amount of money making improvements to it, such as building a new outer great chamber and enlarging it by purchasing adjoining buildings. It was a magnificent property, and it's little wonder that King Henry VIII took it in 1529 when Wolsey fell from favour. In October 1529, Eustace Chapuis, the imperial ambassador, in reporting on the downfall of Wolsey, recorded that the king, his sweetheart Anne Boleyn, and her chaperone, her mother Elizabeth Boleyn, had visited York Place to view the cardinal's treasures. They then spent the Christmas period planning improvements to the property. Anne Boleyn used it as her London residence, residing there with her mother, and her father and brother also had rooms there. In around 1532, the property became known as Whitehall, perhaps because of the colour of its stone, and probably due to the king wanting its past links to Wolsey and the See of York to be forgotten. On the 25th of January 1533, Whitehall served as the setting of the secret marriage of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, who was pregnant with Elizabeth at the time. Just over 3 years later, on the 30th of May 1536, it was the setting of another marriage, that of Henry VIII and Jane Seymour, just 11 days after Anne Boleyn's execution. Then, in 1537, court painter Hans Holbein the Younger was commissioned by Henry VIII to paint a mural at the palace on a wall of the King's Privy Chamber. In the mural was a central monument carved with an inscription commemorating Henry VII, Henry VIII's father, as a great king. The monument was surrounded by 4 figures: Henry VIII and his third wife Jane Seymour at the front, and Henry VII and his wife Elizabeth of York towards the back. From this day in 1558, the palace became the main residence of Henry and Anne's daughter, Elizabeth. Although it was convenient for Westminster and Parliament, I often wonder whether Elizabeth felt close to her mother there, knowing that her mother had resided at the palace and had a hand in its renovation, and perhaps that's why she chose to be there. Elizabeth added a banqueting house and spent many Christmases at the palace. Sadly, the palace Elizabeth knew does not exist today. Most of it was destroyed by fire in 1698, having survived the 1666 Great Fire of London. The present banqueting house dates back to 1619. Today, only Henry VIII's wine cellar, situated under the Ministry of Defence building, survives from the Tudor period. It was originally an undercroft from Cardinal Wolsey's Great Chamber. It is so sad that this wonderful building is now lost. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about a Tudor man who changed sides in the succession crisis of 1553, served Queen Mary I faithfully, and survived being a Catholic recusant and being implicated in a serious rebellion against Elizabeth I to die a natural death in his 80s. Do make sure you're subscribed, you can click there, and that you've hit the bell so you don't miss that video. You can find a link to last year's On This Day in Tudor History video in the description. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you watching. You can give me a like and leave me a comment. I'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.